The road stretched out before me, long and empty, flanked by towering pine trees that whispered to each other in the wind. My GPS had given up miles ago, stubbornly insisting that I had driven off the face of the earth. And honestly, felt like I had. I glanced at my phone, no service. Again, figures, I muttered. This was classic horror movie territory. You know the drill. Big city guy ends up in some podunk town where the locals all share a secret. I told myself I wasn't that guy. I was here for a job, not to play amateur ghost hunter. I'm a photographer, or more accurately, an urban explorer. I make a living shooting abandoned places, crumbling asylums, decayed mansions, forgotten factories, the kinds of places that make you feel like the past is watching you. There's a huge online community obsessed with this stuff. People eat it up. And when I heard about Harper House, an old Victorian manor in the middle of nowhere with a dark past, I knew it was gold. Every small town has its local ghost story, but Harper House? This one was different. According to internet legend, an entire family disappeared inside over 30 years ago. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just gone. The only thing left behind was a dinner table set for 6 and a single chair knocked over. Creepy, right? Naturally, I had to see it for myself. I rolled into Blackwood Falls just as the sun was beginning to set. The first thing I noticed? Silence.
No birds.
No wind. Just the hum of my engine and the crunch of gravel under my tires. The second thing? The town looked off. Not abandoned, just wrong. The buildings were old but well-maintained, almost too well-maintained, like they were stuck in time.
No peeling paint.
No boarded-up windows. The kind of town that looked like it had been preserved in amber. And the people? They were all watching me. I pulled into what passed for a main street. Just a handful of buildings, a diner, a gas station, and a motel that looked like it came straight out of Psycho. There were a few people milling about, but instead of the usual who's, the Southsider glares you'd expect in a town like this, they all smiled. Not just polite, small-town smiles. These were too wide, too friendly, like they had been waiting for me. I climbed out of my Jeep, stretching my legs, and immediately, a man in a flannel jacket approached. "New in town?" he asked, grinning. His teeth were too white. "Just passing through," I said. "Name's Carl. You staying the night?" "Yeah, just need a place to crash before I check out Harper House in the morning." The second I mentioned the house, something shifted behind his eyes. Flicker. Gone so fast I almost missed it. But the smile? It never wavered. "Harper House, huh?" He chuckled. "Lot of folks come round asking about that place." "I bet they do." Carl clapped me on the back. Too familiar for someone I'd just met. "You should grab a bite at Marge's Diner before heading to the motel. Best pie in town." There was something too insistent in the way he said it. Like he wanted me to go there. Like he expected me to. I nodded. "Sure, thanks for the tip." He didn't move. He just kept smiling until I turned away. I pushed open the door to Marge's Diner and immediately felt like I had walked onto the set of a 1950s TV show. The black and white checkered floor was pristine. The booths were cherry red, and the waitress behind the counter was watching me before I even sat down. There were a few other customers, an elderly couple sipping coffee, a man in a suit reading a newspaper, a teenager poking at a slice of pie with his fork. None of them spoke. I slid into a booth. The waitress appeared instantly, like she had been waiting for me to sit. "New in town?" she asked, pen poised. I forced a smile. Word travels fast. She didn't blink. "What can I get you?" I scanned the menu, but something felt off about it. The font was old-fashioned, the prices were ridiculously cheap, and something about the way the food was listed, it was just wrong. Instead of breakfast specials or lunch combos, the sections were labeled. "Stay a while, don't go." One of USI blinked, looked again. The words were normal now. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. I exhaled. "Jesus, Dan, get a grip." "Just coffee," I said. She nodded. "You sure you don't want the pie?" There it was again. The pie thing. "I'm good." She hesitated for a fraction of a second before walking away. The moment she was gone, I felt a presence, like someone was watching me. I turned my head. The man in the suit had lowered his newspaper, and he was staring right at me. The coffee tasted bitter. I barely drank half before tossing a few bucks on the table and heading for the door. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt heavier. Carl was gone. The people who had been walking around earlier, gone. Main Street was empty. I walked to my Jeep, glancing over my shoulder. The town felt hollow, like it was waiting. At the motel, I booked a room under the name Daniel Carter, but the clerk, an older woman with two bright eyes, shook her head. "Oh, we already have you checked in." I frowned. "No, I just got here." She just smiled. "Room 6, she said, handing me the key. The motel room was nothing special. Floral bedspread, old TV, faint smell of cigarette smoke. But the second I shut the door, I knew something was wrong, because there was already a bag on the bed. A duffel bag, not mine. I unzipped it. Inside were clothes, men's clothes, my size, and underneath them, a camera, my camera. But I hadn't unpacked yet. A chill rolled through me. I turned to the mirror above the dresser, and that's when I saw it. Not my reflection. Someone standing in the corner behind me. A tall figure, unmoving, watching. My stomach twisted. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty, but the feeling, still there, like I wasn't alone, like I had never been alone. And from the hallway outside, I heard it. A voice, faint, just a whisper. "Welcome home." There are moments in life when your gut just knows something isn't right. Like when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. Or when you wake up at 3 a.m. for no reason, heart hammering, certain that something was watching you in your sleep. This was one of those moments. Standing in that cheap motel room, staring at my own belongings that I hadn't unpacked, I felt my insides coil up like a rattlesnake ready to strike. The rational part of my brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe the motel staff brought my bags in for me. Maybe I had been so tired from the drive that I somehow forgot unpacking. But deep down, I knew that was bullshit. And then there was the whisper, "Welcome home." 2 words, soft, almost affectionate, but wrong. Every horror movie tells you what to do in a situation like this. Step 1, get the hell out. Step 2, never look back. But in real life, it's not that simple. My Jeep was outside. Sure. But where was I going to go? I was miles deep in the ass end of nowhere with no GPS, no cell signal, and nowhere else to sleep. The next town was at least 2 hours away, and it was already pitch black outside. Besides, I wasn't leaving without Harper House. That's what I came for. That's what people wanted to see. Abandoned places, real horror. My followers ate this kind of thing up, and Harper House had legendary status. If I bailed now, I'd look like an idiot. So, like every dumb horror protagonist, I stayed. I shoved the weirdness aside, convinced myself I must have forgotten unpacking, even though I knew I didn't, and forced myself to get some sleep. Big mistake. Sleep came in fits and starts. Every time I drifted off, I'd jolt awake, skin cold and damp, feeling like something was in the room with me. And then, sometime after midnight, I woke up for real, because something was in the room with me. A tall figure stood in the corner. My breath hitched. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline of a man, unmoving, watching. The shadows wrapped around him like oil, thick and wrong, like he wasn't just standing in the darkness. He was part of it. I tried to sit up. Couldn't. Sleep paralysis. I'd had it before, but this was different. This wasn't my mind playing tricks on me. The air was thick, charged like a live wire, the kind of feeling you get when a storm is about to hit. I could hear breathing, not mine, deep, slow. The thing in the corner just stood there, waiting. Then it moved, not stepped forward, glided, closer and closer. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to do anything, but I was frozen, trapped in my own body. And then it leaned in so close I could feel it, a whisper of cold air against my skin. And it spoke, not in words, not in sound, in thoughts, foreign, jagged things that scraped across my mind like claws on glass. "You are already home." And then, just like that, it was gone. The second I could move, I lunged for the bedside lamp, hand shaking as I flicked it on. The room was empty, but I knew I wasn't alone. Not really. By morning, I was running on fumes. I checked out of the motel without bothering to shower, paid in cash, and avoided the clerk's gaze. If she had any idea about what happened last night, she didn't let it show. I grabbed a coffee from the diner, no pie, thanks, and drove straight to Harper House. I found it exactly where the old online maps said it would be, at the end of a dirt road choked with weeds, hidden deep in the woods. No signs, no markers, just a crumbling iron gate covered in rust and vines. And beyond it, the house. The first thing I noticed, it was too intact. Most abandoned places look abandoned, roof caving in, windows busted, nature reclaiming its place. But Harper House stood tall and proud, like time had forgotten about it. The white paint had barely peeled, the windows were uncannily clean, and the front door, slammed shut but solid. It was like it was waiting. I should have turned around, but I didn't. Getting inside was easy, too easy. The front door wasn't locked. It swung open with a groan, revealing a hollow silence that swallowed all sound. The air was stagnant, thick with the scent of old wood, mildew, and something else. Something faintly metallic. Blood? I stepped inside, camera in hand. The floorboards creaked beneath me. My breath sounded too loud. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a whisper, soft, almost playful. I froze. The camera was still in my hands, rolling. I forced myself to lift it, snapping the first photo. Click. The flash lit up the hallway, and for a split second, I saw a figure at the end of the hall, just standing there, tall, unmoving. Then the light was gone. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I flicked to the photo preview on my camera. Nothing. The hall was empty. I exhaled a shaky breath. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Or maybe the house was watching. I moved deeper inside. The floor plan was eerily preserved, like someone had just stepped out for a moment and never came back. And then I found it. The dining room, the last place the Harper family had ever been seen. The table was still set for 6, plates covered in dust, silverware in perfect order. But there was one thing out of place. A chair toppled over, just like in the stories. I lifted my camera, snapping another shot, and that's when it happened. The chair moved, not a slow creak, not a wobble from uneven flooring. It slid back into place, scraping against the floor in one smooth motion. By itself, I sucked in a sharp breath, ice slithering down my spine. Then footsteps, above me, heavy, deliberate. Someone was upstairs. No, something was upstairs, and it knew I was here. I'll be the first to admit that I've done some stupid things in my life. Once, in college, I thought it'd be funny to climb onto the roof of my dorm after a few too many beers. Spoiler, it wasn't. Ended up hanging there like a dumbass until campus security pulled me down. Another time, I agreed to house sit for a friend, only to realize, at 2 a.m., that they forgot to mention their house was next to a cemetery. I didn't sleep all night, but this was next level stupid. Every nerve in my body screamed, get out. But did I leave? No, of course not, because I'm an idiot. The thudding above me was slow and deliberate, like someone was walking the length of the upstairs hallway. One step, pause. Another step, pause. The kind of movement that suggested whoever or whatever was up there knew I was listening. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Okay, 2 options. 1, run. Forget the photos. Forget the views. Forget everything and just haul ass back to the Jeep. 2, investigate. Because obviously, breaking every horror movie rule has worked out so well for me so far. I took a shaky step back toward the front door. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence. Too silent. You ever notice how real silence isn't just an absence of noise? It's pressure, a weight in the air. That's what this was. It was like the house itself was holding its breath. And then a whisper, not above me this time, right behind me. Daniel. I spun so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. Nothing, just the long, empty hallway. But I swear, I wasn't alone. At this point, every instinct I had was telling me to go. And I almost listened. I really did. But there was one problem. The photo, that picture I took earlier, in the hallway, the one where I thought I saw someone standing at the end of it. I needed to check it again. Hands shaking, I flicked my camera to preview mode, scrolled back, and there it was, that dark shape at the end of the hallway, tall, unmoving, watching, but this time, it was closer. Nope, nope, nope. I don't care how much you love horror or how many ghost stories you've read. Nothing prepares you for something like this. Adrenaline hit me like a truck. I backed up toward the front door, stomach twisting, every muscle tensed. And then the chair moved again. The one at the dining table. The one that had slid back into place before. This time, it tipped over, hard, like something had kicked it. I nearly dropped the damn camera. I was done. I turned, bolting for the front door, and then something laughed. Not a normal laugh. Not even a human laugh. This was wrong, thin, and reedy, like it was being pulled through a cracked radio speaker. It echoed from every direction at once, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. I didn't look back. I ran. I don't even remember the drive. 1 second, I was sprinting out of Harper House. The next, I was skidding into the parking lot of the Blackwood Motel, heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. I locked the Jeep doors, hands clenched around the steering wheel. My breath came fast and sharp, like I just run a marathon. What the hell just happened? I pulled up the camera again, scrolling to the hallway photo. The dark figure, closer now. So close I could almost make out a face. Almost. And the worst part? There was another one now, a second figure, standing right behind me. I dropped the camera so fast it hit the passenger seat with a thud. No. I squeezed my eyes shut. I'm seeing things. I have to be. But when I opened them, the motel window had fogged up from my breath. And in the condensation, a handprint pressed against the glass from the inside. Somehow, I convinced myself to go inside. Maybe because I couldn't handle sitting in that car any longer. Maybe because part of me stupidly thought I'd be safer in my room. I wasn't. The second I stepped in, I knew something was off. Smelled wrong, like dust, mildew, and something else. Something metallic. Blood. I flicked on the light and froze because someone was standing in the corner, tall, unmoving. A shadow stretched long and thin against the wall. I stopped breathing. Then the light flickered, and in that split second of darkness, it moved. Not a full step, just a shift, a barely there lurch forward. The second the light came back, it was still again. Couldn't move, couldn't blink. The air pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. I forced my mouth to work. Who are you? No answer. I swallowed. My hands were trembling. I reached for the camera, fumbling with the strap, lifted it, snapped a photo. The flash went off, and when my vision adjusted, the man in the corner was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I kept every light on, sat on the edge of the bed, watching that corner like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. And then, just as the sun started to rise, the radio clicked on. Old, static-filled. A voice crackled through the speaker. Familiar. Too familiar. My voice. Let me in. The words slid down my spine like a knife. I lunged for the radio, ripping the cord from the wall. The static cut out. Silence. And then, a soft knock at the door. I did not move. I did not breathe. The knock came again. And then, Daniel. A whisper. A familiar whisper. My voice. Coming from the hallway. I clenched my hands into fists, nails digging into my palms. This isn't real. This isn't real. Then a final whisper, right behind me, so close I could feel the breath on my neck. Welcome home. You ever have one of those moments where reality feels like it's slipping? Like you blink, and suddenly the world tilts just a little too far to the left? That's what waking up in Blackwood Falls felt like. Except I wasn't sure I had actually fallen asleep. 1 second, I was sitting on the edge of the motel bed, lights on, heart jackhammering in my chest. The next, I was waking up to sunlight filtering through the curtains. Not normal sunlight, too bright, too white, like it was trying too hard to be real. My body felt heavy, like I had been drugged. My limbs were sluggish, my head thick with fog. And worst of all, the radio was still unplugged, but it was playing. I shot up so fast my vision blurred. The radio sat on the nightstand, the cord still yanked from the wall, but the speakers crackled with soft static. And then, a voice. Good morning, Daniel. I nearly knocked the damn thing off the table, because the voice wasn't mine this time. It was cheerful, almost sing-song, like a 1950s housewife welcoming her husband home from work. Time to start your day. A chill prickled my skin. I grabbed the radio with both hands, my fingers ice cold against the plastic. The dial moved on its own, shifting through frequencies, landing on one that made my blood run cold. It was an old interview, crackling, distorted, but I recognized the voice immediately, because it was mine. And what brought you to Blackwood Falls, Daniel? The question came from some unheard interviewer, a man. My own voice crackled in response, thick with static. Oh, I just wanted to see it for myself. The house, the town, get a feel for the place. I froze. I had never given an interview. Not here, not anywhere. The recording continued. And what do you think so far? My recorded voice hesitated. And then, I think I made a mistake. The radio cut out, just dead air. Then, from right outside my door, knocking. I didn't open the door, not at first, because I was pretty damn sure that whatever was knocking wasn't something I wanted to see. I stayed frozen, breath held, waiting. The knock came again, louder, then a voice. Hey, you awake? Human, a man's voice. I exhaled, shoulders slumping with relief. I opened the door, and there stood Carl, the too friendly guy from the day before. Except, something was different. His smile was gone, and for the first time, he actually looked uneasy. You okay? He asked. I blinked. What? You look like hell, man. I almost laughed. If only you knew. Carl rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting up and down the hallway. Listen, he said, voice lower now. Did you, hear anything last night? I went rigid. Like what? He hesitated. Then, Ed's missing. Who's Ed? I frowned. Who's Ed? Carl's eyes narrowed. The gas station guy. You talked to him yesterday, right? I hadn't even seen a gas station guy, but something told me I shouldn't say that. So instead, I asked, what do you mean missing? Carl exhaled through his nose, looking more unsettled by the second. Didn't show up for work. Nobody's seen him since last night. Maybe he left town? Carl shook his head. No. Why not? His mouth tightened. Because his house is gone too. I stared at him. What? Gone. Just not there anymore. Like it never existed. A cold weight settled in my chest. I thought of Harper House, the moving chair, the figures in my photos, the whisper in the motel. And I realized something. Blackwood Falls wasn't just haunted. It was erasing people. Lucy told me what no one else would. People came to Blackwood Falls, and then they stopped being people. Some vanished outright. No bodies. No sign they had ever been there. Others? They stayed, but they weren't the same anymore. You ever notice how everyone in this town acts a little off? She asked, voice low. I thought of Carl's 2 white teeth, the motel clerk who had checked me in before I arrived, the way people in the diner never really spoke. You think they're all? Lucy nodded. They weren't always like this. They came here just like you. And now? She shot a glance toward the other customers. They belong to this place. A chill slid down my spine. How do I leave? I asked. Lucy's face darkened. That's the problem, she said. You might not be able to. I didn't even finish my coffee. I booked it straight to my Jeep. If this town was a trap, if it was changing reality, making people disappear, then I had to get out now. I slammed the door shut, turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I nearly cried from relief. Then, I peeled out of the parking lot, gravel spitting under my tires. I sped through town, past the diner, past Harper House, down the road I had come in on. And then the trees thinned. The road opened up. I saw the highway ahead. I was gonna make it. I was gonna make it. And then I blinked, and I was back in town, right in front of the motel, like I had never left. The gas station was gone now, and so was Carl. You ever have that dream where you're running, but no matter how fast you go, you don't get anywhere? That was what trying to leave Blackwood Falls felt like. Except this wasn't a dream. This was real. I sat in my Jeep, hands clenched around the steering wheel, staring at the Blackwood Motel sign in front of me. It wasn't possible. I had driven straight out of town. I saw the damn highway, but now, I was back where I started. No detour. No wrong turn. No memory of flipping around. Just back. Like the town had spit me out. Or worse. Like it had never let me go in the first place. I put the Jeep in reverse, my heart slamming against my ribs. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I missed a turn somewhere. I backed up fast, whipping the wheel around, tires skidding on gravel. And I gunned it, straight down Main Street, past Marge's diner, past the empty lot where the gas station used to be. I kept going. The trees thickened on either side of me. Good. The road stretched ahead, long and empty. Even better, I pressed down on the gas pedal. Faster. The town faded behind me. My hands started to loosen their grip. Maybe I just needed to go farther. Maybe whatever was happening. Then I saw it. The Blackwood Motel sign, right in front of me, like I had never left, like I had never even moved. I slammed the brakes. My Jeep skidded to a stop. No. I gritted my teeth, threw it in reverse again. Same road, same trees, and minutes later, same damn town. I turned the Jeep off, sat there, in stunned silence, breathing hard. And then, from the passenger seat, a voice, soft, "You can't leave." The blood drained from my face. I turned my head, inch by inch. The seat was empty, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The air was too thick. My breath fogged the windshield, and next to mine, another breath, deep, slow, like something was sitting right beside me. I kept my eyes straight ahead, pulse hammering. Then, a shape appeared in the rearview mirror, tall, dark, sitting in the back seat, watching me. I didn't think. I bolted. I threw open the door, stumbled onto the pavement, heart slamming against my ribs. I looked back. Nothing. The Jeep was empty. But when I turned to the window, There was a handprint on the glass. From the inside, I didn't go back to the motel. I went straight to the diner. Lucy was still there, still behind the counter, still wiping down coffee mugs like her life depended on it. But when she looked up and saw me, her face fell. "You tried to leave," she said flatly. "You knew," I said. She exhaled, rubbing her temples. "Yeah," she admitted. "I knew." I slammed my hands on the counter. "And you didn't think to warn me?" "I did warn you." She was right. But she hadn't said why. "Lucy," I said, lowering my voice, "what the hell is going on?" She hesitated. Then, "Blackwood Falls doesn't let people go." Lucy pulled me into the back room of the diner, away from the prying eyes of the customers. She lit a cigarette with shaky hands, took a long drag, then exhaled. "How long have you been here?" she asked. I blinked. "What? In town? How long?" "2 days. She gave me a sad smile. "Are you sure?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She sighed, running a hand through her dark curls. "Time doesn't work right here," she said. "Neither does space. People come in, but they don't always leave." I swallowed hard. "Like Ed," I said. Lucy nodded. "And the others?" Pressed. She met my eyes. "They're still here," she said. I frowned. "But Carl said..." "They're still here," she repeated. "Just not how they were." A chill slithered down my spine. "You mean?" She nodded. "They become part of it." Lucy put out her cigarette, exhaling hard. "I've tried to leave 27 times," she said. I stared. "And?" She shrugged. "Same as you. I always end up back here. I felt sick. There has to be a way out." Lucy gave me a long, tired look. "If there is, I haven't found it." I ran a hand through my hair. "Couldn't stay here. I wouldn't. I needed to think. I needed air." I muttered something about needing a walk and pushed out of the diner. And that's when I saw him, Carl, standing across the street, watching me, but there was something wrong. His face was too still. His smile was wider, too wide. His skin looked stretched, like it wasn't his skin at all. And his eyes? Pitch black. I froze. Carl just stood there, staring. Then slowly he lifted a hand and waved. It should have been normal. It wasn't. The way his fingers moved, too stiff, too deliberate, like a puppet on strings. I took a step back. Carl tilted his head, his smile stretching even wider. I blinked, and suddenly he was right in front of me. No footsteps, no movement, just there. I sucked in a sharp breath. His mouth moved, but his voice was wrong. Too many layers, too many voices. "You can't leave, Daniel." I turned and ran. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I ran past the diner, past the motel, past Harper House, heart pounding like a war drum. The streets were empty, too empty. No cars, no people, like the whole town was holding its breath. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the woods. The trees loomed ahead, dark and tangled. I had 2 choices. 1, stay in town where Carl, or whatever the hell he was now, could find me. 2, run into the woods, into the unknown. The answer was obvious. I took a deep breath, and I stepped into the trees. Behind me, the town watched, and from somewhere deep in the forest, something whispered my name. There are things in this world that make sense. Gravity, the smell of fresh coffee, that one friend who always Venmos you exactly $4.38 for their half of the Uber. And then there's Blackwood Falls, which made no sense at all. I had spent the past 48 hours, or was it longer, trying to leave, trying to figure out why this town felt like a trap. Now I was sprinting into the woods because Carl, or the thing pretending to be Carl, had looked at me with a mouth stretched too wide, with eyes that were too black, and told me, "You can't leave, Daniel." Well, screw that. I was gonna try anyway. I don't know what I expected when I ran into the forest. Path, maybe. Signs of civilization. Something that would eventually lead me out. What I got instead. Endless trees. Thick, tangled branches that clawed at my arms. Leaves that whispered in a language I didn't understand. And the worst part? The silence.
No birds.
No insects, no wind, just my own footsteps. And then another set of footsteps, not mine. I stopped walking. The footsteps behind me didn't. They kept moving, slow and deliberate, getting closer. I turned fast. Nothing, just trees. I stood there, breath heavy, heart racing. And then, somewhere deeper in the woods, a voice. Not loud, not a shout, a whisper. "Daniel." My blood turned to ice. I forced myself to take a slow step backward. Then another. The whisper came again. "Daniel, come back. It was familiar, too familiar. It was my voice. Nope, nope, nope. Every survival instinct I had was screaming. I turned and bolted. Branches whipped against my skin. My feet slammed against the dirt. I didn't care. I ran. The whisper followed me. Close now. Too close. Daniel, stop running. It was right behind me. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and I wish I hadn't, because I saw it, just for a second. A shape in the dark. Tall, wrong, moving like a broken puppet, and its face, it was mine. No! Every survival instinct I had was screaming. I turned and bolted. Branches whipped against my skin. My feet slammed against the dirt. I didn't care. I ran. The whisper followed me. Close now. Too close. Daniel, stop running. It was right behind me. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and I wish I hadn't, because I saw it, just for a second. A shape in the dark. Tall, wrong, moving like a broken puppet, and its face, it was mine. I didn't stop until I hit water, literally. My foot slid on wet rocks, and suddenly I was tumbling down a slope, rolling through leaves and dirt until I hit something cold and deep. A river, which made no sense, because there was no river on any of the maps I had seen of Blackwood Falls. I came up gasping, heart hammering. The current was slow but strong, pulling me away from the shore, and then a sound, a splash. From behind me, I turned, still treading water. The trees on the opposite bank were dense. The shadows were thick, and standing there on the shore watching me was me. This version of me, it wasn't right, stood too still. Its arms hung at its sides, limp, and when it tilted its head, its neck cracked like a broken branch. Then it smiled, and I knew, whatever this thing was, it wasn't human. It wasn't me, but it wanted to be. The thing that wears my skin. The thing on the shore lifted a hand. It waved, slow, deliberate, and then it stepped into the water. I didn't wait. I turned and swam like hell. The current pulled me, fast and rough. My arms burned, my lungs screamed, but I kept going, because if that thing caught me, I didn't think it would kill me. I thought it would replace me. I don't remember how long I swam. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. All I know is that at some point, the river spit me out on the far shore. I crawled onto the rocks, shaking, soaked to the bone. And that's when I heard a voice, a real voice. Jesus Christ, Daniel. I blinked up. Lucy, standing at the river's edge. She looked like she'd been searching for me, like she had been waiting. She grabbed my arm, hauling me up. What the hell happened to you? She demanded. I tried to speak, but all that came out was, "There's something in the woods that looks like me." Lucy didn't argue, didn't ask if I was sure. She just set her jaw and said, "Yeah, that happens." I stared at her. She sighed. "You're not the first person it's tried to copy." She didn't say it. She didn't say him. She said it, like she already knew this wasn't just a ghost, not just a haunting, but something worse, something that took people, and sometimes became them. Lucy pulled me through the woods. She didn't take me back to the motel. She took me somewhere else. A basement, stone walls, candles flickering, like a safe house or a prison. She locked the door behind us, then turned to me, eyes dark with something I didn't understand. "You have to stay here tonight," she said. I frowned. "Why?" Her jaw clenched. "Because if you go back to town," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "tomorrow morning you might not be you anymore. Let me tell you something about sleep deprivation. First, it's just annoying. Your body feels heavy, your thoughts get a little foggy, and you start relying on caffeine and pure spite to function. Then, after a while, it gets weird. You start losing time. You forget why you walked into a room. Words don't come out right. You look in the mirror and feel like you're seeing yourself for the first time. And if you push past that, you start seeing things that aren't there. At least, that's what I told myself was happening. Because after that night in Lucy's basement, I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was real anymore, or if I was starting to become something else. When I woke up, I didn't recognize where I was. The basement was dark and damp, the air thick with the scent of old stone and mildew. Lucy was gone. The only thing left was a half-smoked cigarette in an ashtray. For a few seconds, I just sat there, rubbing my face, trying to shake the uneasy feeling in my chest. But when I pulled my hands away, I froze, because my fingers, they weren't mine. For a split second, they were longer. The bones too thin, the skin too pale, the nails too sharp. I blinked, and they were normal again. I let out a shaky breath. I was losing it. I didn't bother looking for Lucy. I just went back to the motel. And maybe that was the biggest mistake I've ever made. The second I stepped inside my room, The air felt wrong, like the walls had shifted slightly while I was gone. I dropped my bag on the bed, didn't turn on the lights. I don't know why, maybe because I didn't want to see what had changed, but I still saw the mirror, the one above the dresser. It was pitch black, not reflecting the room, not reflecting me, just a dark void, stretching infinitely. And then, in the darkness, a shape, a figure, tall, too tall, standing right behind me. I turned, nothing, but when I looked back at the mirror, the thing in the reflection didn't go away, and it was getting closer. I didn't breathe, didn't move. The thing in the mirror, it wasn't just watching me, it was copying me, the way I stood, the way I breathed, the way my chest rose and fell, but a fraction of a second slower, like it was learning. I lifted a hand, it lifted its. I swallowed, it swallowed too. Then there was a knock at the door. I jumped, and when I looked back at the mirror, the reflection was smiling. The knock came again, louder this time. I turned toward the door, pulse pounding in my ears. Daniel! A voice, a familiar voice. I froze, because it was me, on the other side of the door. Let me in, my voice said, soft, gentle, almost pleading. My stomach twisted into a knot. Open the door, my voice whispered. I just want to talk. No. No? No? No. I backed away. My heel hit something. I turned, and the mirror me was standing right behind me now, grinning. Let yourself in, it whispered. I don't, but somehow it was open now. The curtains billowed slightly, the night air creeping in. And then I realized I wasn't alone in the room anymore. Something moved behind me. I could feel it, breathing. I turned slowly, and there it was. Not the mirror thing, not the thing at the door. Something else. Something that had been waiting. Something that had been inside me all along. And it smiled. It's okay, Daniel, it whispered. You don't have to fight anymore. And then the lights went out. When I woke up, the sun was shining. The motel room looked normal, like nothing had happened, like I had dreamed it all. But I knew something was inside me now, something that was waiting, something that was taking its time. And when I looked in the mirror again, I wasn't smiling, but my reflection was. You ever wake up and feel like something's just off? Not in an ugh, I slept weird and now my neck is broken kind of way. More like I'm not sure I woke up in the same reality I fell asleep in. That's how it felt when I opened my eyes the next morning in Blackwood Falls. The motel room looked the same. Same crappy wallpaper, same flickering light bulb, same ugly floral bedspread that smelled faintly of mildew. But something was wrong. And then I remembered. The knock at the door, the thing in the mirror, the voice that sounded like mine. I sat up so fast my head spun. The mirror was still there, but the reflection, it wasn't smiling anymore. I stumbled out of the motel room, still wearing yesterday's clothes, still feeling like I had a weight pressing against my chest. Lucy had to know something. She had warned me, hadn't she? Told me this town did things to people, that it could change them. I needed answers. But as I walked down Main Street, something became painfully clear. People were watching me, not in the oh look, a stranger kind of way, in the way people watch a car accident in slow motion. And here's the part that really made my stomach twist. I had seen some of these people before, yesterday, but they didn't look at me like they recognized me. They looked at me like I was brand new, like they had never seen me before in their lives, like I had just appeared out of nowhere. And suddenly, I wasn't sure how long I'd actually been here. The diner was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. Even the radio wasn't playing. Marge, the woman who ran the place, gave me a weird look from behind the counter. Morning, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Is Lucy here? She blinked, like the name meant nothing to her. Who? I stared at her. Lucy, I said again. She works here. Marge frowned. Then she laughed, like I had made a joke she didn't get. Sweetheart, she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Ain't nobody named Lucy working here. I felt my stomach drop. No, I was just here with her yesterday. She told me. Marge's expression darkened. You sure about that? And just like that, I wasn't. I walked out of the diner in a daze. The morning sun was too bright. The air felt too thick. My hands were shaking. My pulse too fast. Lucy was gone. Not just gone, erased. Like she had never been here. Like Carl. Like Ed. Like the gas station that wasn't there anymore. It was happening again. And I had a terrible, terrible thought. What if I was next? If Lucy was gone, I had to find someone else who knew what was happening. So I went to the mayor's office, or what passed for one in Blackwood Falls. It wasn't a fancy building, just a brick structure with a single sign out front that said, Mayor Richard Tull. The door was unlocked. I walked in, and immediately, I knew this was a mistake, because Mayor Richard Tull was already waiting for me, sitting behind his desk, hands folded neatly in front of him, and he was smiling. "Daniel Carter," he said, "not a question, a statement." I swallowed hard. "You know my name," I said. His smile never wavered. "Of course I do," he said. "We've been expecting you." A chill slid down my spine. "Who's we?" The mayor tilted his head. "Blackwood Falls," he said, like that was supposed to explain everything, like the town itself was alive. And maybe I sat down, because my legs felt unsteady, because I already knew this wasn't going to be a conversation I could walk away from. I took a slow breath. "Tell me the truth," I said. "What's happening to me?" The mayor's expression didn't change. "Nothing," he said, and then, "everything." I clenched my hands into fists. "I've seen things," I said. "People disappearing, places vanishing, things that shouldn't exist." The mayor nodded. "Yes," he said, "you've noticed it quicker than most." "Noticed what?" He leaned forward. The smile never left his face. "That Blackwood Falls is not a place," he said. "It's a pattern." His words sent a chill down my spine. "A pattern," I repeated. "Yes." I swallowed hard. "And what happens when the pattern repeats?" The mayor's smile widened. "You've already seen it," he said. I thought of Carl, gone. Lucy, gone. The thing in the mirror that looked like me. The version of myself standing in the woods. It hit me all at once. "People don't just disappear," I said slowly. The mayor nodded. "They become part of the town," he said. And then, with an almost gentle expression, "And so will you." He stood fast. Too fast. The room tilted slightly. My head throbbed. My thoughts felt slower. I pressed a hand to my forehead. "What did you do to me?" The mayor sighed. "We didn't do anything," he said. He stood, walking to the window, looking out over the too-perfect town. "It's just the way things work here," he said. "You stay long enough and Blackwood Falls will remember you. And then," I asked, throat dry. He turned back to me. "And then you won't remember anything else." I ran. I didn't care if it made me look insane. I bolted out of the office, down the street, past the diner, past the motel, past every fake perfect building in this cursed town. I didn't stop until I reached my Jeep. I fumbled with the keys, heart pounding. I had to leave. Now, I shoved the key into the ignition, turned it. The engine roared to life. Relief flooded through me, but then the radio crackled, and a voice came through, a voice that made my blood turn to ice. "Where are you going, Daniel?" It was me, laughing, smiling, and in the rearview mirror, I saw myself sitting in the back seat, grinning. "Let me in," my voice said, and then the lights went out. I don't remember blacking out. 1 second, I was in my Jeep, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, heart pounding like a war drum. The next, I was somewhere else. First, I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized, no, this was worse, because I was back where it all started. Harper House. It loomed in front of me, just as wrong as I remembered. Too intact for a place abandoned decades ago. The paint wasn't chipped. The windows weren't broken. It should have looked dead. But it wasn't. It was waiting, and somehow it had brought me back. I turned in a slow circle, trying to get my bearings. My Jeep? Gone. The town? Gone. Just me and the house, and the front door standing wide open. Every instinct in my body was screaming run. But where? The road behind me had vanished, swallowed by the fog creeping in from the trees. The house breathed, its walls expanding and contracting like a living thing. I took a step back, and the door slammed shut. No wind, no movement, just closed, like it was telling me something. And I understood, in the way you understand things in a nightmare. There is no leaving now. I don't remember walking forward. I don't remember choosing to enter, but suddenly, I was inside. The air was thick, heavy, like the house itself was watching me. It wasn't dusty. There were no cobwebs, no signs of age or decay. Instead, it looked like someone had just stepped out for a moment. The furniture was perfectly arranged. The chandelier flickered softly, and the table? It was still set for 6. Same plates, same silverware, same knocked-over chair, waiting, just like before, just like it had been for decades. I lifted my camera, snapped a photo. The flash lit up the room, and for a split second I saw them. 5 figures, sitting at the table, faceless, still, dressed in old-fashioned clothes. And the knocked-over chair? It wasn't empty anymore. There was something crouched behind it. watching me. The flash faded, and they were gone. But I knew they were still there. I could feel them, waiting. I moved, not because I wanted to, because I had to. My feet carried me forward, deeper into the house, down the endless hallway. I heard footsteps upstairs, heavy, deliberate, like someone was waiting for me to follow. And the worst part? I did. I climbed the staircase, heart hammering. The steps groaned under my weight, but the house was silent, too silent. I reached the landing. A long, dark hallway stretched ahead, and at the end of it a door, standing wide open, inviting me in. I stepped inside, and my breath caught. Mirrors, dozens of them, covering the walls, the ceiling, the floor, each one reflecting me but not quite right. In some, my face was blurred. In others, I was smiling when I wasn't. And in the largest mirror, the one directly in front of me, I wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind me, tall, thin, featureless, a shadow stretching into human shape. It lifted a hand, placed it on my shoulder. I felt it, cold, wrong. I spun around, nothing. But when I turned back to the mirror, the reflection didn't move. It just stared, and then it spoke. You were always going to end up here. The voice was mine, but it wasn't coming from my mouth. It came from inside the mirror. I took a shaky step back. This isn't real, I whispered. The reflection smiled. Isn't it? I shook my head. No. Then why can't you leave? I froze, because it was right. Every time I had tried to run, I ended up right back where I started. Like the town was folding in on itself. Like it had been pulling me in from the moment I arrived. And now I was at the center of it. Harper House, the heart of everything. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes? Hours? Time didn't feel real anymore. But then I heard it. A voice, soft, familiar. Daniel. I turned, pulse spiking. It was Lucy, standing in the doorway, eyes wide. I felt relief crash over me, heavy and warm. Lucy, I breathed. You're alive. She nodded slowly, but something was wrong. Her eyes flicked past me, to the mirror, and her face changed, because she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at what was standing behind me. My stomach dropped. I turned, and the reflection was still there. But now it was closer. Now it was stepping out of the glass. Its shape twisted, warping into something that was almost me, but not. Lucy grabbed my wrist. Run. I didn't need to be told twice. We bolted down the hallway, feet pounding against the old wooden floor. The house groaned around us. The walls shifted. The doors stretched. The mirrors shattered one by one. And behind us, the thing that had crawled out of my reflection was coming after me. Not running, gliding. Lucy yanked me forward. Faster, she gasped. The front door was just ahead. But I knew. Harper House wasn't going to let me leave. Not without a price. Not without taking something from me. And I had a horrible feeling. That price was me. You ever have that moment when your brain just refuses to process what's happening? Like, this is too much, I'm done. Goodbye. That was me, running through the twisting halls of Harper House. Lucy's hand gripping my wrist like a vice. The thing that looked almost like me gliding after us. And the house, the whole damn house, warping around us, shifting like something alive. I should have been screaming. I wasn't, because some part of me, some deep, awful part, was starting to understand. I was never meant to leave. The floor groaned under us. The walls stretched, warping, closing in. The front door was ahead, just feet away. Lucy yanked me forward. Almost there. Almost. The hallway expanded, right in front of my eyes. The door that had been within reach suddenly ripped away, stretching down an impossible, endless corridor.
No, Igaspat.
No. Lucy stopped short. She turned, face pale, eyes wide with horror. It had changed reality itself. Harper House didn't want us gone. It was keeping us. And behind us, that thing, the thing wearing my face, it was still coming. Silent, smooth. It didn't walk. It glided like it wasn't bound by the same rules of physics as me. Its eyes, my eyes were locked on me, unblinking, hollow, hungry. It reached out, and for the first time, it spoke. Let me in. My blood turned to ice, because it wasn't just talking. It was inside my head. Lucy yanked me back. Don't look at it, she screamed. Too late. I felt it. Something slipping, something shifting inside me. Like my own consciousness was unraveling. Like something else was trying to push in. I doubled over, gasping. My reflection whispered again. Let go, Daniel. You were always meant to stay. It didn't sound threatening. Sounded soothing. welcoming, like falling asleep, like sinking into warm water. And for a second, for just a split second, I almost listened. A sharp pain snapped me back. Lucy had slapped the hell out of me. "Get up!" she shouted. I blinked, dazed. "Did you just—" "Yes, I slapped you," she yelled. "Keep moving." I would have thanked her, but we were still trapped in a nightmare. The other me, was closer now, reaching, and Harper House? It was laughing, not with sound, with the walls, the floor, the whole structure trembled with amusement, because it knew I couldn't escape, not unless I gave it what it wanted. A trade. One version of me for the other. The old Daniel leaves, the new one stays, forever. I don't know what happened next. Maybe Lucy did it. Maybe the house was toying with us. But suddenly, a door appeared, right there, in the middle of the hall. It wasn't there before. I didn't question it. I ran. Lucy and I slammed into it, throwing it open, and we fell through. We hit the ground hard. Dirt, grass, fresh air. We were outside, but something was wrong. Blackwood Falls wasn't there anymore. The buildings were gone. The streets? Gone. Just endless, twisting trees. And the house? Harper House was still standing. But now it looked abandoned, like it had been rotting for decades, like none of this had ever happened. I turned to Lucy, breathless. What just happened? She just stared, shaking. "I don't know," she whispered, and that's when I felt it. Presence. Still with me, still inside me. I felt wrong, not hurt, not in pain, but different, like a piece of me was missing. Or worse, like something extra had been added. I looked at Lucy, and she knew it too. She took a slow step back. "Daniel," she said softly. I swallowed. "What?" Her voice trembled. "You need to look at your shadow." A cold chill slid down my spine. Slowly I turned. And my shadow? It was still there, but it wasn't mine. It was too tall, too thin. And when I moved, it didn't move with me. It lagged behind, like it was waiting for me to stop paying attention. Like it wasn't a shadow at all, but something else. Something that had followed me out. Something that had taken my place inside Harper House. And now, it was wearing me instead. Lucy and I didn't go back into town. There was no town to go back to. Harper House still stood. But Blackwood Falls? Gone. Like it had never existed at all. I don't know how long we stood there, staring at the rotting mansion. But eventually Lucy spoke. "Do you feel it?" she asked. I didn't answer, because I did. I felt everything. The weight of the town, the pull of the house, the cycle starting over. And I knew, deep down, it wasn't over. Not really, because Blackwood Falls would return. It always did. And when it did, I would be waiting. Weeks passed, months. Time felt weird now. I was different. I wasn't sure how much of me was still me. And one day, the cycle started again. A new car, a new traveler, another outsider drawn to the town that shouldn't exist. I watched from the trees, from the shadows, just like something had once watched me. And when the newcomer got out of their car, they looked right at me, not through me, not past me, like they knew, like they could feel it too. And deep inside me, something that wasn't me smiled. "Welcome home,"